You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Chris in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, TV shows, games, books, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 670, where tonight it's our final character spotlight episode on the Mandalorian and Grogu, our final show that we're going to do publicly, breaking everything down. A show that we've called Heroes and Hermits, although there's really only one hermit, two if you count Chris. Chris is with us also. No, I'm kidding. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show. How you doing tonight, man?
Stay away from my fish. I'm doing well. I'm ready to have fun with this tonight.
Yeah. We'll get into that here in a second. If you've not had a chance to go back and this is your first time joining us or seeing the show for the first time, like you said, we've done a number. I don't know how many episodes now we've done. We've probably done a good maybe 8, I think, or 7
episodes. Yeah, I do total. Think so. Yeah.
Breaking down different aspects of the Mandalorian and Grogu, different character spotlights, that sort of thing. So this again will be the final public one. We may still have one more Patreon show that we'll do, but maybe more on that here in just a little bit. Before we get into all that, how about some shout outs and business from Chris here?
Absolutely. So we'd like to give a shout out to our Patreon members, are now part of the tribe members: Krista Martinelli, Will I Am, my girl Paisley, I Got a Brad Feeling, Rita Reborn, Jacob H, Josh C, Uncle Leon, Sharkman Dan, Alejandro, Jackson A, Daz Davies, Risk Bayless, Danny P, Mike Borda, Dante, aka Utini, and Kat, aka Vader's Girl. Then we also have our Delusions of Grandeur level of Patreon membership. We have Now This Is Rod Racing, my friend, Rob G, Steve C, and my girl Vanessa. Thank you so much for your support of the Cantina Cast. Also, we would like to give a shout out to those of us watching us live on Instagram. We actually debuted the last public show on Instagram, and we didn't tell anyone. We kind of let it see how it would kind of cook there, and it went really well. So we're back on. Look for us to be on Instagram going forward for the public shows, and also look for us on other other social media platforms, I should say, in the future. So thanks you so much if you're joining us from Instagram. Yep. Some programming notes: what the shows we have coming up here in the future. On July 14th, we'll have a public show that is going to be a spoiler-free review of the Star Wars Legacy novel by Madeline Rowe. So look for that coming up on July 14th. On July 20th, it's going to be a Patreon episode, and we're going to continue our breakdown of the Echoes of the Empire mini-series, comic series that revolves around Galaxy's Edge. We'll be breaking down issues 2 and 3. Again, that's going to be on July 20th, so look for that information on that episode coming up in the future as well. Then we will have the next show, which is a to be determined when and it will actually happen. That's going to be a Patreon show. But after that, the next public show is going to be our full spoiler review and discussion on the Star Wars Legacy novel. That's going to be happening on July 28th. So look for that show coming out. If you are going to pick up the novel here and give it a read, come and discuss it with us.
Yeah, July 28th, that is when the novel actually drops.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the embargo will lift on July 14th, and that's why we're going to do the spoiler-free review. But as I mentioned in the last episode, if you are spoiler adverse, you might want to stay clear of the 14th, just because there are some folks that will do a full review on the 14th. We will not. In fact, we probably won't do any breakdown until about a month later. And I'm currently working on trying to get Madeline Rowe to come onto the show, and so we can talk about her, as we've done with Adam Christopher and Claudia Gray and a number of other artists and creators. So that'll be a lot of fun. Can't wait to talk about that book. So many good things to say about it, but I can't say anything yet until the 14th. So join me on that 14th for that show. Okay, let's see. I think that's all of the business. How about we get into our breakdown of these heroes and hermits? And I thought we could start with Colonel Ward. You know, we spoke about Colonel Ward. We spoke about all these characters, I think, during our kind of final review show that we did. But Colonel Ward, that was the one character, one actress that I remember going into this. We had some questions about just how large of a role she was going to have. I think some people have noticed that in this movie, there was a lack of female representation. There weren't a lot of female characters to begin with. But we had a strong character in Colonel Ward, and the limited footage that we had of her, limited time that we had with her on screen. of course, backed up by arguably this sci-fi queen or herself, Sigourney Weaver, which everyone was thrilled and stoked that she was going to be finally making taking a turn, I guess, at Star Wars and being in that Star Wars universe, immortalized now in Star Wars. But I think the criticism I still see is out there about whether or not she should have had a larger part. That some felt like her role was, quote, wasted. I don't know, wasted is a right term. I would agree that I would have wanted more from her character. I love Sigourney Weaver. I love the idea of this character that once, was in the trenches, so to speak, with Leia and Holdo and all the other great rebellion type iconic heroes that we have. I love that idea. Her background sounds great. She's a pilot. We got to see that in action. So we did get some action a little bit later, but she did feel a little bit limited. I guess I have my own thoughts and opinions as to why that is and whether or not I liked it. But I guess out the gate, what about you? How did you feel about her portrayal of the character? And do you feel like there was a lack of representation for her, or for her character not being in the on screen more, giving the acting power and the star power that Sigourney Weaver brings to movies?
So, first of all, I thought she her performance was fine. I didn't have
Yeah.
an issue with her performance whatsoever. When she was on screen, she was the one in charge, and she gave off that aura that she was the one in charge when she was talking to the Mandalorian. When they had the attack on Nal Hutta, she was in charge. So I thought she played the role well. But I do think that Filoni and Favreau kind of floundered an opportunity to try to expand her role, uh, or at least give her role a little bit more like gravitas, I guess, because we knew she was in charge, but we were fed this backstory before the movie even came out of how, like you mentioned, she was a veteran of the Civil War, of the rebellion. Worked alongside Holdo and Leia, so I would expect a character like that just to have a little bit more oomph in their debut appearance in a Star Wars movie. Um, and I just thought they didn't do that. So as far as them expanding on her character, giving her more screen time, that was a missed opportunity because you're right. Sigourney Weaver is the queen of sci-fi. We go all the way back to Alien, Ghostbusters, now Avatar. You know,
Galaxy's Quest.
Galaxy Quest, Galaxy. Yes, that was great. It's one of
Yeah.
my favorite movies of all
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And then she kind of has a couple of good lines, and she has that little comedic bit with Grogu and the food and stuff. Uh, but other than that, I mean, the character fulfilled their purpose, and from a story perspective, I thought it was fine. But if there were other opportunities to get her in there to kind of expand on the character, I thought they should have taken advantage of it, especially with all the backstory that was fed to us before the movie came out. I did notice though that like when they first announced the Mandalorian and Grogu, and then they first announced that Sigourney Weaver was going to star in it, they
Mhm.
kind of hit on that really hard initially, especially if we go all the way back to Star Wars Celebration Japan, where they focused on Sigourney Weaver a lot during that panel. But then I noticed when the marketing started to kick up as we got closer to the release of the movie, yeah, they mentioned she was, it was, with Sigourney Weaver, but as far as like trying to focus on Ward, they really didn't. Instead, the focus went to the Hutts or Embo or Din Djarin or Grogu, and she was kind of at that point. The marketing was kind of regulating her to a side character. So I don't know if maybe they thought they had a bigger plan for her, and then as, movies evolved during production, they kinda had to cut it down for some reason, and that's why, at least to me, the marketing, they kind of, you know, put her as a side character, not really someone with a lot of oomph in the movie. That could be as well, but back to my original sentiment, I thought they squandered an opportunity to expand that character.
Yeah, I do too. Like, in some of it, there's a part of it that feels very nostalgic in that you've got this, I say aging character. I forget how old she is. She's got to be almost 60 something at this point, right? But you've got an aging actress, aging actor, and they're coming into Star Wars and being kind of like the, mentor type role, right? That's very similar and nostalgic to like Alec Guinness or Peter Cushing coming into like Star Wars back in 77. They had already had these fruitful careers and came in and had these kind of bit roles where They were cool to throw on the movie posters, and they were recognizable for people of that generation. They go, wow, I remember this character growing up with them. It was that same kind of thing. But even still, they had arguably bigger roles in the movie and had more significant roles in the movie than what she had. So from that perspective, I can kind of see why they would do that. If I'm not wrong, I think her hook in Japan is huge. Like, she's a massive actress here in the States and worldwide, of course. But, there's some actors that have just like a godly presence in some other countries. And I think she fits into that one for Japan. Like, I think they absolutely love her over there. I don't know if it was the Avatar stuff or, Ghostbusters or whatever it was, Alien, whatever it was she's done over there. She's done a lot of commercials over there that they don't ever do here. So it may have been one of these things where just from a marketing perspective and trying to generate hype in a local market, they decided to kind of push her out there and get her out front and, appeal the fans in that way. So that might have been it. So I don't know that I feel like I was misled, but it did feel like there was going to be more for her character to do. Like, I think she was fine. I think the way she acted serviced the script, right? It's not like they gave her some really deep, meaningful content that she could really get her acting chops into and work with. It was very much like, I'm here to kind of just help the story move along. And oh, by the way, I'll be back a little bit later and you'll get to see me in a cool, X-Wing pilot suit and blowing up stuff, right? That's really all it was. But I mean, all that said, like you said, I felt like she did fine with the role. It's a character that now that we have her, I want to see a lot more of her. Like, whether it's going to be immediately after the events of the Mandalorian and Grogu, do we go back in a flashback and see her in other things? Is it a book? Is it a TV series? I'd love to see more of that character, just and more of the relationship and just how, the interpersonal relationships that she had with some of the iconic characters. The same thing, I've said that about Holdo too. Like, I know her and Leia had a very, very close relationship. I almost spoiled something about Legacy. But it would be nice to see more of that relationship as well as all the other characters that are yet to come. So all that said, I felt like she did a fine enough job with material that was given to her. And, maybe they could have, like, where would they have gone and extended? Some of it is limited to the story itself. This story was really supposed to just focus on the Mandalorian and Grogu. It was supposed to be their story. And so you can't really bring a third character or fourth character and suddenly take up a lot of screen time just because it starts to pull away from them, right? It's that whole development that they were going through and finally separating and Grogu going on his own and being able to fend for himself. That was really the crux of it all. But, to think that you've got Sigourney Weaver there and you don't have more to do with her, it feels like it was a bit of a miss, I guess, for me personally.
If I can compare it to another kind of, I guess you'd call it wasted opportunity. If we go back to Solo, the character, I don't remember the character's name, but she was played by Thandie Newton, who is a very prolific, a very famous and she's done a lot of great work. And she just kind of serviced the plot, and then that was it. She was done, and they killed her character off. I thought, hey, you got Thandie Newton in a Star Wars project. You should have used her a little bit better. And that's kind of like how I feel about Sigourney Weaver. I mean, she's acting royalty. She could probably pick and choose the role she wants at this point in her life.
Yeah.
And she chose to do this movie. Where they could have added her without trying to take away from the focus being on Grogu and Din Djarin, I don't know. I'm not a writer, but I if there was a opportunity, they should have taken it. But I do have a feeling that we'll probably see her again. But
yeah, I do too.
I mean, they had an opportunity to just especially again, how they were how they were hyping up that character and all the backstory we were getting about that character before the movie came out, and then to kind of just have her be just like a background player, it bugged me a little bit because I wanted more.
Yep, no, I agree. Travis came in clutch for us, man. How's it going, guys? He says Val was Newton's character. Yes, yep. Val. Thank you. It's been a while. I haven't seen Solo in probably 3 or 4 years, to be honest. I know, shame on me. Take my Star Wars card away, but I haven't. But yeah, that's a good call out. Val was somebody that, again, I was excited. And I think at the time when she came out, she was like knee deep in what was the HBO series that they were doing that was based on the book with the droids or whatever it was. Good Lord. Yeah. Anyway, she was doing some really good stuff there, some prolific work there on HBO at the time. So, but yeah, will she pop up again? I think it depends. Again, there's so much that's unknown about where we go from here. We don't have kind of like the roadmap yet. I'm hoping that we'll get that maybe at like a D23, some hints about where we're going with that. Maybe we get it. I hope by next year at Celebration, they kind of give us at least a forecast of what things are going to look like over the next 2 or 3 years, maybe 5, 10 years. I don't know. I don't want to be too greedy here, but
yeah,
depending on, where they want to go, especially now that Filoni and Brennan are in charge, I think that might kind of have some pointers as to whether or not we see her pop up. Especially with technology today, there's all kinds of things they could do, right? If they want to flash back, if they want to. So, but yes, definitely feel like we need more of her. If we can't get her on screen, and by the way, I would say that if we see her do come back, I don't know that we're going to see her on the big screen. Like there may be an opportunity for like the Rey movie since she's still around there. They could age her a little bit more because she'd be much older at that point. Not too much older, but she would be. Well, hold on, let me think about that. Yeah, she would be older. So they could maybe stick her in there and have her kind of be like this old kind of frail jet or leader within the Resistance or New Republic again, whatever it is. So that's a possibility, but I suspect that if she's going to come back, they're probably going to stick her back in this era, and maybe she becomes more of a kind of a central figure to whatever that central conflict is going to be, whether it's Thrawn or some new big bad or whatever's happening in that Filoni verse. I would assume that's kind of where this is going to go, but. And I'm not opposed to a book. Would love a book. Give me a book. Give me more content with her. Give me a comic book. I'd be fine with that as well. But yeah, we kind of need to know more about her. All right, let's move on to Hugo Durant. So Hugo Durant, played by Martin Scorsese. We went into this movie and we kind of called it. We said it was going to be like a small role. I couldn't see Martin Scorsese playing a large role for this, especially after all the feedback he had given around the Marvel movies.
Right.
And I think you and I said that he was going to be somebody that he would, the Mandalorian would pop in every once in a while and would just check on and get some information and go kind of the next quest. And then he'd be that central point, that central figure. That exactly turned out to be the case. We only had 2 touch points with him, and that's fine. And I wasn't expecting him to be kind of a thing that would carry on throughout the entire movie. But I love the character. Like, I love the fact that they got Scorsese. He's got such a great voice that I could see why Favreau was really excited when, Kathleen Kennedy had made the call and got him to come over. He did confirm later on, I think in interviews afterwards, that Rio from Solo and Hugo were related. I think he said in theory. I don't know what that means, but I'm just going to say they're related. They're brothers, cousins, something. They have the cooking blood in them, and they're, they're both cooks in some way. So it's really great that they did that, but it does feel like this is going to be kind of like a one and done character. I don't suspect that we're going to see more of either Rio, maybe Rio, but more, at least Hugo. I don't think we're going to see more of Hugo anytime soon or in the future. But what do you think?
No, I think it's one and done. I think it was a nice callback to Rio Durant out of Solo. And yeah, Martin Scorsese, he did a great job. I honestly, I don't recall a role that he's ever played other than like himself, like in movies like that. But he was perfect. I mean, it was like perfect casting for Hugo Durant. And I think I've said this on the show before. That sandwich that he made looked really good. Was it like a flat beef something? It was like, I want one of those.
It was like flat beef, and I think there was some shawarma inspiration in there as well.
Yeah.
Have you gone out to like StarWars.com and seen the entry they have for Rio Durant?
No.
So they have an entry in there, and then there's another article, and I forget. So everybody kind of carried. I forget who had the original article, but they actually asked him, and Favreau goes in this whole story about how they actually work with the chef that was on the set there, making the meals for the cast and crew, whatever. And it started into like, hey, we're gonna have a chef. What would they use? And once he found out the character had like multiple appendages, they ended up doing even more like analysis and work. And he started theorizing, okay, with the utensils would be different, and he would be doing this while he's doing that. And so it got way more complex than it really needed to be. But there was a lot of thought and a lot of professional opinions and influence that was going into the cooking techniques and how this character would cook, simply because they had that chef that was there helping them out. So it's funny how that just kind of took off and became its own thing behind the scenes, anyways.
Yeah, I also know that they did a bit on StarWars.com, and I haven't seen it. I've just seen like little clips of it of how to make that sandwich. And so
Right.
I think now, probably after the show's over, I'm gonna go check out StarWars.com to see how to make that sandwich. Because again, in the movie, I know it was CG. It was a CG sandwich,
Yeah.
but it looked good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I guess same feelings though. One and done. Do you think we'll ever see him
Yeah,
again?
I think we're done. Yeah, I think we're done. Because
Yeah.
here's the thing, um, you know, Scorsese's getting older, and I'm sure he probably has another film or two that he wants to pump out before he gets of age where he can't really make movies anymore. I don't think he's going to have time to do any more voice work, and you can't bring back that character without him. So I think because of and other maybe story type situations, I think we're not going to see any more of Hugo. But
Yeah.
what we did see was very entertaining, and Scorsese did an amazing job voicing him.
Yep. Yeah. Really enjoyed the character. Let's see. Going back to the chat real quick. Sergio, Westworld. Thank you. Yes, that was the name of the show that I was trying to think of.
Mhm.
I only saw the first season. Didn't see anything more than that, but I really enjoyed that first season. Thought it was great. And then Travis Mitchell signed up for the $4.99. So thank you for the shout out
you.
there in the amount.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Really appreciate that. As always, thank you so much. And then he had a comment here. Imagine the movie ends and we see Hugo's food cart now set up in the New Republic base. That would be cool to kind of bring him back in there,
Yeah.
right? As doing him a solid, doing a favor. Because I imagine maybe he's lost money now that Coin's not running that gladiatorial thing. All the gladiators are gone.
Right.
Rada's gone, so that
Mhm.
guy's out of business. So he's going to be looking for. Well, maybe not out of business, but business probably took a huge hit. So yeah, get him over in the over on the New Rebel base and have him start cranking out sandwiches for the crew there. That'd be a great ending to it. So, and I think
Yeah,
people are agreeing with you there.
Yeah, I'll go to Delphi base just to get a sandwich.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Now they have a Rontel wrap. I've seen that. Somebody posted. It was
Yeah,
Strong Mustachio.
that's from Galaxy's Edge. Yeah, Ronto Wrap.
Yep, that looks
And
really good, by the way.
yeah. Oh, they're amazing. I don't. They have like it's a slaw and a sauce and then a hot dog with essentially a pita bread. And I don't know what they do with that sauce, but it's good.
Good stuff.
They also have a breakfast version, and the breakfast version is good as well. So you get some of that with the calf. That's a perfect breakfast, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, you have me at wrap. So, all right, let's talk next about Zeb. This is a big character. Like,
Yes.
This is one of those characters that again felt like maybe we were going to get a lot of screen presence. Turned out to not be the case. But I'm okay with that. And I think I'm okay with that very selfishly because, as I said, going into this, I was just happy and enamored with this idea that suddenly Zeb was going to be a character that was going to become widely known. And I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's like a household name and they're printing, action figures of Zeb and kids are just consuming him. But he's made that's a big deal to be on a Star Wars movie. And you have a character that is coming from Star Wars Rebels. We've had other characters make their big screen approach, of course, in the Ahsoka series, but that is still limited. This is a ton of people watching it for the first time, getting to know who Zeb is. Do I feel like they did enough with this character to really kind of give us the essence and the full effect of like who Zeb is and how we all fell in love with him through the course of like 4 seasons? No, that's probably unfair. Again, given the amount of screen time he had. But I felt like everything was perfect in terms of like his character, everything from the gait and how he walked, the amount of CG that was used for that. I mean, that opening scene after the credits, during the credits where they're walking towards the camera. I love that. I mean, it looks real. It looks absolutely real. And how much money they spent on that was perfect. And I'm excited about the idea that this feels like it does open him up to more stories in the New Republic. Again, I don't know that he goes to the movies. It feels like maybe this is he has his on-screen presence and then pops in later during Ahsoka season 2 or Ahsoka season 3 or something when we get the Rebels back together. Maybe we get like a Rebels, season or 5 or whatever. It's a reunion. It's all live action, and he's a part of that crew as well. I would love to see him come back, but again, I think my takeaway was, I thought they did a great job with his presence. Great to hear him. Great to see him. I didn't feel like we did enough with his staff, like there was a lot more that could have been done
Mm-hmm.
based on the television series or the cartoon. But I think they did enough to kind of show that if you were paying attention, I think you saw that it was a staff and it did
Mm-hmm.
shoot as well. But there's a rich history there with his character too, in that species and how they're gone. And there's a lot of lore that goes with it that I think would be intriguing to somehow weave into additional stories in the future. But overall, I was very, very happy with Zeb's return, and especially at the big screen here with the Mandalorian and Grogu.
Yeah, I thought they did Zeb perfectly. From the actual character himself, the CG, like you said, the gait, the weapons that he used, his mannerisms, his quips and everything that he had is very similar to what we saw from Zeb in Rebels. I thought they did a great job with him. And I thought his time in the movie was adequate. He was supposed to be a supporting player, and I thought they did him well enough to fulfill that supporting player role. We knew he was going to be in the movie. We saw, him in trailers and whatnot. And I unlike Ward, where they pumped a lot of backstory, they didn't really have to do that with Zeb because everyone knew his backstory if they watched Rebels, right?
Right. Yeah.
But he was a supporting player, and I thought they used him appropriately. So I was also very happy how they used Zeb.
I guess the one thing that was missing was the whole Agent Callus thing. And don't get me wrong, there's no reason they would have to bring Callus into this. I got excited because when Rebels ends, we see Zeb with Callus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of going back over to Lyrasan, like the planet of where hopefully that species is going to rebirth or regrow, I guess, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I was hoping that would be that. Maybe we got a mention of him or something else. It was kind of a shot in the dark. But it does beg the question of like where Callus is, like what's going on with that. Is he out there? Is he trying to help the Lasats regrow? Is he still out there on Lena Sol? I'm not really sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that they brought everybody back at this point and except him just kind of helps me or gives me faith that at some point we'll get an update on where Callus is, because that is one of those stories that's really great. They start off as enemies. They're in constant conflict through a number of seasons, and then it's when they get stuck on that one planet where they have to kind of help each other. It becomes kind of like Alien Mine, if you've ever seen that old movie, where they kind of have to work together to survive. Yep. That really changed the dynamic of their relationship, and it really turns him against. He was part of the Empire, and he defects because of that. He defects because of all everything that's going on, but more importantly, that relationship that he had created with Zeb. So he feels like a second part, or I guess the other half of Zeb in a lot of ways. So outside of that, him popping up later down the road would be great, but I didn't really expect him to be in this movie. Right. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think about Callus? I know we're not really talking about Callus, but I'm going to go there. Do you want to see him back? And if so, where do you suspect that he would be?
So here, I know I'm in the minority here. I do not like Agent
Well, Chris,
Callus.
thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. No,
I do not like the character Agent Callus.
Why?
He is, to me, he reminds me of a more juvenile General Hux.
Okay.
And he just annoyed me. He was an annoyance. He was just like an annoying bad guy for me throughout all of Rebels. So when I saw kind of like, when I saw that one episode too, and I could tolerate that. I thought that the episode where, they Zeb and Callus had to help each other on that planet, I thought that was a good episode. But overall, I just did not care for Callus. So if we never see or hear from Callus again, that would suit me just fine.
All right. Well, I won't pull up all the comments that are people. No, I'm just kidding. They're going to come at you with pitchforks, man. I'm telling you.
That's fine. I mean, I know, like, that, there are a lot of fangirls who had and guys who had a crush on him. And I get that. For a cartoon, yeah, you could say that, yeah, he's a handsome dude, but for as far as a character, I just couldn't stand him. So
yeah,
yeah, if we never hear from him again, that's fine.
Look at Dale coming in with the puns. He's kind of a callus to Chris. So probably
on the bottom of my foot. Exactly.
Very true.
Yep.
All right. Well, the other thing I will say about Zeb is, we've talked a lot about potentially Rhoda and Zeb being kind of like a two characters, or I'm sorry, Rhoda and Yoda, or jeez, Rhoda and Grogu. I wanted to say Baby Yoda, and I have to stop saying that. But Baby Yoda, Grogu, and Rhoda pairing up later down the road. They're going to live a long time, so it may kind of make sense. But maybe we have this story in the interim where now that he's come over to the New Republic, he is hanging out and learning things from Zeb, right? Could we see potentially those two pair together, right? If we go back to like the Filoni verse and we talk about Colonel Ward and Thrawn and all that stuff, and we don't have Grogu and the Mandalorian playing a huge role in all that, or maybe it's like a Ahsoka season 2, Ahsoka season 3 kind of thing, would it make sense to have them paired up? Because it feels like, the way they left that off was like, hey, I've got a uniform for you. He doesn't really have a lot of friends there, outside of Mandalorian Grogu, and they're not really a part of it. They're just kind of, they're hired by the New Republic. So it feels like he is going to be, paired up with Zeb, at least in the short term. And so maybe that's an opportunity to get him to come back on like a season 3 or, on the small screen again before we get him, big time, I guess, if you will, later down the road with Grogu. How would you feel about something like that?
So I'm going to take a left turn there. I think that I know you talked about season 3, and I'm assuming you're talking about season 3 of Ahsoka, right?
Ahsoka, yeah. I mean, and that's not confirmed. That's me just
right.
Wishful
You're just
thinking.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think now the Zeb has to be in season 2. I think they're essentially getting the gang back together. They're getting the group back together.
As a slow build up, yeah.
You can't have that crew of the Ghost without Zeb. I mean, we don't have, obviously, Kanan's gone, right? His son will take his place, obviously. But no, I think we have to see Zeb, considering that now we know, well, I believe we knew before that Zeb was a part of the New Republic, but now we know how vital he is to the New Republic. There is, in my mind, from a story perspective and from a fan service perspective, there is no way Filoni will get away with not having Zeb play at least a similar type of part that he played in The Mandalorian and Grogu in season 2 of Ahsoka. So,
yeah, that's the toothpaste is out of the tube kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely, and we can't put him back in. So I am pretty confident we're going to see him in season 2.
Yeah.
Again, it would be I think it would be another missed opportunity, and I'm sure now that a lot of the fans have gotten their look at Zeb, really doing something on a live action format, visual media, he has to be there. So I'm 99.9% sure we're going to see him, and I am 90% sure that he's going to play a big role.
Okay, so let's say we do see him in a season 2. Do you think it's too far to think that again he's paired up with Rhoda? He's like hanging out or learning from him, right? Kind of on the job training kind of thing.
Well, if we follow Filoni's, we have all these connected characters in the Filoni verse, which now includes, Rebels. He's very good at like putting all his stories in a silo where, okay, we're focusing on these characters, and yes, we know they've had adventures, they've had trials and tribulations with other characters in the Filoni verse.
Yep.
But they don't. It's like when he's telling that story, they don't exist. And we can go back to the Mandalorian and Grogu. There was no mention of Bo-Katan. There was no mention of Mandalore. Nothing. No mention of Boba or Fennec Shand. And we all know what they went through.
Yep.
Nothing. So I think there's a very good chance that we won't. It's going to be siloed, and we won't get that connection to the other characters.
Yeah. It wouldn't. I guess it doesn't have to happen, and likely if it did happen or didn't happen, we wouldn't think anything different because it's just there's a precedent that's been set by Filoni for things like that. So
Yeah, and could there be a mention of Rada? Yeah, but I'm pretty sure the situation is going to be he's back on a Delphi based training.
right, yeah, right. They just
You know.
make mention of him. And
Yeah,
that's
make
about
mention
it.
of him. If that, I don't think we'll see Rada in any live action media anytime soon. But I still believe in my heart of hearts that they have a plan for him
Yeah.
and Grogu. So
I think the
yeah,
my biggest concern is really around like the budget and what it would
Yep.
cost to bring him on. I mean, that was the reason why in season 3 of The Mandalorian we got him like from the chest, from the waist up, and in very small spurts because it costs a lot to animate him, right? So if you're thinking about bringing him on to the small screen, well, that's going to take up a huge part of your budget unless
Right.
we've got technology that's come a long way. I don't know, I hate to say through the use of AI, but something that is really accelerates and brings down the cost of animating that character. Though that's really going to be the long pole in the proverbial
Right.
tent in terms of whether or not we see him on small screen versus big screen, and for how long, like what kind of a presence they're going to have. Animated, if they wanted to go back to that, then sky's the limit. Bring back Rada, bring back Colonel Ward, bring
Right,
back
right.
everybody at that point. But yeah, live action is just a little bit different just because of the cost that's going to be involved.
Yeah, and you had mentioned the new four letter word in culture, which is AI. Um, I I I think if they can utilize it as a tool, but not as a creative part of the process, I don't have a problem with them if they could utilize AI to try to help that. I've in my other life, um, the life that pays
Yeah,
the
right.
bills, AI is utilized as a tool all over the place,
Mhm.
and I'm not, automation, graphic, flow chart, creating stuff like that. Um, I think there is a logical, ethical place for AI in entertainment as well, but not from a creative. Like we don't want to ask AI to create a story for us. We want human writers who have experience with humans and their experiences to do those for us. But if they can help animate, an arm swinging back and forth for on a CG character a little bit faster than a human can, that's a tool that an artist can use. So it's just like a paintbrush at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with that. But I do agree that yes, for a television show to utilize a completely CG character, even in 25-30% of the series, it is expensive. So we may be limited as to what we see from Zeb, but I hope they are able to incorporate him and make his part of that story something that is fruitful and something that is heavy to the entire story of Ahsoka season 2.
Yeah. Just on that note of AI, if you read between the lines, I get what I think the official, I forget who it was now. I don't know if it was Brennan. No, it wasn't Brennan. Who's the new CEO?
Of Disney,
Yeah.
Josh D'Amaro.
Yeah, DeMar. I think he made a comment that if you read between the lines, it's kind of like what you're saying. They're open to it, but they don't want it to lead.
Right.
And I think that's probably the more ethical and right approach. We'll have to see. Like it's too early to say how that's going to turn out, and I'm sure everybody's going to have an opinion on that. But we'll see. I'm in favor of things helping them out, especially if it means accelerating the production cost or the production time, bringing down the production costs.
Right.
But not at the risk of the artists and not at the risk of the people that are actually doing the storytelling. That's kind of where I stand. I know there's a lot of material, a lot of area in that to get there, right? But I think that would be really helpful. And to be clear, when we say, will we see him on screen because it costs a lot, that's under the assumption that they maintain the same level of quality that they've already established in this movie. They could come down on it. And I wouldn't be opposed to that because I've seen that happen when they, I wouldn't say they cheapen it, but they don't spend as much money. It's really about the character. And I can look past that as well, as much as I can look past, Mark Hamill not looking like Mark Hamill in, The Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett. As much as I can look past, Han Solo's character in Solo versus Harrison Ford. And you know what I mean? Like the character is the character and that supersedes a lot of that stuff. So you kind of have some grace with that they could do something like that to bring him on screen and not have to really try to maintain that same level of quality.
Right.
Just in the chat here, Paisley came in with a really good question. What Zeb do you enjoy more, live action or animated?
Well, we have a lot more content to go on from an animated perspective. So for me right now, it's animated. Although the live action Zeb, even though technically he's still animated, but the live action Zeb is pretty good so far.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, and the more, and I love the question, but I think the more important thing to me was, were they consistent? Did we see the same character come from the small screen animated to the big screen live action? And the answer is absolutely yes. Right.
Mhm.
You know, if we with Zeb on the, I guess both of them were fine. Both of them were exactly the same. I think the only thing that was missing on the big screen was, again, just the amount of time. Like, even when I think about the action sequences, like, we've seen Zeb do some really amazing type heroic things over in the animated series. And we got to see that in this in the movie. We got to see him go through the hallway, and he was kind of taking out a bunch of different Imperial remnants, right, when they were there at the base. But it was so fast paced, and there were a lot of close shots. The lighting was kind of darker in some areas. A lot of that I feel like was done just to kind of mask the amount of detail they needed to put into the animation, so it brought the production costs down. So it's hard to say that if we got to see him do the things that he did in the animated series, that would be really awesome. But then, again, you're looking at an increased budget. But yes, I would say it's kind of unfair in the sense that you've already had essentially 4 seasons of Star Wars Rebels. It's hard to say that that's not going to be your favorite Zeb versus the live action, just the amount of time. But
Right.
They are the same character as far as I'm concerned. So, I mean, and then you've got, Steve Bloom doing the voice. I mean, he's like 90% of the character. No offense to anybody that does the animation or anything, but Steve Bloom is Zeb. I mean, he is the voice.
Yeah.
And so it's just a natural kind of transition.
Yeah. It's like that for a lot of really popular animated characters. I mean, we look at all the clones and whatnot, D. Bradley Baker, obviously Ashley Eckstein for Ahsoka. We can go outside of Star Wars, Kevin Conroy for Batman and Mark Hamill for like the Joker. A lot of times the voice makes the character. And I would say, for Zeb, Steve Bloom makes that character. So it's kind of a situation where if you have Zeb anywhere, animated or live action, you have to have him do the voice.
Yep. No, 100% agree. All right, just 2 more things here. I guess 2 more characters, or 1 character in a group of characters. Gatori, right? This is the hermit that we saw in that movie. And I know, going into this, Stephen McKinley Henderson, first off, the actor was just great. I love his voice. He's got such a great voice. And the way he, again, very limited in terms of the amount of screen time he had, the amount of lines that he had, but what he does with the material that he's been given was great. I thought he did a fantastic job as this character, someone that, I don't know, we probably will never see again, just because he is a hermit living on, of all places now, Hutta.
Yep.
I mean, what are the odds we're ever going to go back to there? I could be wrong. Maybe they do something there. But the amount of theories going into this about him being Yoda's former master were kind of funny. And I didn't ever buy into those, just because it felt like that was such a big leap. And it felt like we were kind of jumping the shark there a little bit to go there,
Yeah.
But I mean, I get it. I can see where, you're looking at the character from the trailer and you're looking at Yoda's former master and you're like, okay, I can kind of see where maybe they're very similar. They both have canes. And I mean, there were a lot of, the human brain is such that we want to make things connect, right? We want to see the connections in all things. And so it was easy to get there, but I guess, I don't know. I mean, there's really not a lot to say other than he had a good role. He does act, maybe we need to do this on Patreon. I've been talking about taking Grogu's journey in this movie and putting it up against The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. And if you follow Grogu's hero's journey from the moment that suddenly Mando's gone, or he has to kind of fend for himself, he kind of goes, Gatori falls into the mentor part of it, right? He meets a mentor similar to the way Luke meets Kenobi, and gives him advice that he needs in order to kind of cross that threshold and go into the belly of the whale and cross the threshold and all that. So it kind of falls in that line, and that's essentially what he does. He empowers him. He kind of gives him more confidence, gives him what he needs to continue on and, bring Mando back up to health. So I do like that aspect of it. I don't think they were trying to get that deep, but I do feel like they were trying to follow the blueprint of a hero's journey, and that's where this character becomes important. Any other assumptions, though, for the character itself, like that you've got or anything else? I mean, again, there's another character I think we both agree that we're not going to see again, but he serviced the story just fine.
That's all he was. He was a character to advance the plot.
Yeah.
He was a character to provide a solution to a conundrum that the hero was undergoing at the time. Once that was fulfilled, his character did not need to show up again. So while I'm grateful for Gatori to actually be there and, keep Grogu safe from Embo, provide Grogu with the antidote for the dragon snake venom, so that way we can get Din Djarin back. That's what he was supposed to do. He did it. If we don't ever see him again, that's okay because he did what he needed to do. That's really all I have to say about Gatori. I mean,
there's not a lot. There are a lot of characters like that in Star Wars and in other media where they're one and done, and we love them because they helped us, and that's about all we get from them. So, I will say this though, Star Wars, Marvel does this too. Like they may do like a comic book annual or a one shot or a short story somewhere down the road where they decide to kind of, revive one of these Glup Shido characters and bring them in. This is probably one of those.
He definitely qualifies for that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, love you. We'll see you maybe next time, Gatori. But thank you so much, Henderson, for your portrayal and voice.
Maybe not. Probably not. But yes, thank you very much.
We'll find out he's actually a Jedi in hiding, and later.
Okay, that's when we start going into happy days, jumping the shark. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You have to be old to understand jumping the shark.
Yes, you do.
Or well versed in pop culture. Okay, so the last group is the Anzellans. Where do you sit with the Anzellans? Like,
oh God, I love them.
Okay, perfect.
I love them.
Why?
Because they're funny and they're cute. That's why I love, and they're very, very smart and they're very, very handy.
Yeah.
I love them. I love we can go all the way back to The Rise of Skywalker. One of the good things, one of the only good things, in my opinion, to come out of that movie, was Babu Frick.
Yeah.
And for probably a whole year after, and especially during the pandemic, because we needed all the happiness we could get during that time. The hey, that's what I was doing that everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, he really was a bright light in that movie. Then when we got to see them in The Mandalorian, and then seeing their mannerisms and how they talk and how they joke and how they, they get in cheap shots to the people that they're talking to.
Yeah.
I just think they're great. And then now we got to this movie, and now we actually see them in distress. We see them and they still have that banter they still have that attitude. They still joke and they still talk, to people like, get like they're getting cheap shots in. And I just love the way they say, baby, they say, hey, baby, come on, go, bad baby. Every time I hear that, it makes me laugh.
Yeah. And that's Shirley Henderson, by the way. I mean, we got to give her props for all the work that she's done with all these
absolutely
characters.
I mean, she's created a culture from within the Star Wars universe around the Anzellans that I think it's sorely needed. I don't care, what you feel about Star Wars and certain projects in Star Wars. As far as in my Star Wars travels, everyone loves the Anzellans.
Yeah.
This is a joke. Let me preface this by this is a joke.
Okay.
If you don't like the Anzellans, you are not a Star Wars fan.
Okay. Strong words, but yeah, I would agree.
It's a joke. I'm joking.
Yeah. There are two sides of, I think there's two camps when it comes to cuteness in Star Wars. And there's always been ever since the freaking Jawas, really. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, if you go back to 1977, the Jawas were the first controversial character. When you get to like Empire Strikes Back, it was toned down a little bit, but then you could maybe throw the Ugnaughts in there in terms of like, cuteness. Oh, they really weren't cute, but then it really like blew up when we got to the Ewoks. Like that was, a time in Civil War history where people were so against it. And ever since then, I think you have group people that fall into two camps of whether how much cuteness can exist in Star Wars and how much cuteness cannot exist in Star Wars. And you have every spectrum, everything in that spectrum from one extreme to the other. I know even going into like, Last Jedi, we had the Porgs. Of course, the Anzellans were the most recent one in the Rise of Skywalker. I'm 100% for the cuteness. Like it just feels like that is a staple. It's part of the DNA. It's been there. It was the precedence was set with the Jawas, maybe even arguably with R2 and C3PO because they were more comic relief. You kind of need that in there. It is part of just the mixture, the cocktail that is Star Wars, good Star Wars telling. And the Anzellans are no exception. I thought they did a great job. Every time that they've been on screen, they've had some really great one-liners, just noises that they've made. The big standout for this movie was, of course, Big Pipe, huh? Like that is like immortalized now. It's just, people say that. I've seen people quote it, and it always got laughs. And every viewing that I went to, that it got a lot of good laughs from people because it's just a funny line. And all that goes back to Shirley Henderson, aka Moni Myrtle, who did the voice acting and continues to do all that. The one thing that I will say though is when we first broke down that trailer or broke down the movie, I think I came on and said, "Oh, that was Babu Freak." It actually is not Babu Freak. I think since then now we have the actual official names of them. I was being thrown off because he has almost the exact same costume as Babu Freak, all the way up into the little visor, the little square visor that he wears. But it turns out these characters are Bai, Clang, Keto, and Minch. Minch being a callback to Yoda's original name, which was Minch Yoda, before they changed it in one of the old early scripts. So it was cool that they kind of brought that character's name in there. So these are totally 4 different Anzellans all together. Their role in the movie was great. Like they actually had a lot of screen time, but it didn't feel like they were stealing necessarily the scenes away because they were serving a totally different purpose, which was I guess twofold. One, to help Grogu get where he needed to go, right? Because he is an infant and there still needed to be somebody there that kind of helped him lead him. Plus he couldn't get off planet. That made absolute sense that they would have the smallest ship with a hyperdrive ever, which I want to know more about that technically. And then the second part of that was to kind of bring a lot more comic relief, which they did respectfully without kind of overtaking or upstaging any of the action that was going on or anything that was going on in the story. So I think they did a great job with the Anzellans. I don't have Anzellan fatigue. So if we have an opportunity to bring them in and it makes sense, then I would say bring them in. Right. I'm all for it. I think if we do, I don't know that we'll see these 4 characters again. Maybe we do. But it feels like they are kind of tied at the hip, at least to the New Republic now. It feels like when they docked there, maybe they are going to be, allied with the New Republic. And that's just what they do. They go around helping those guys do whatever they need. Because remember, they started as a call out, right? Mando makes a call and says, I need somebody to come out here and help me get this thing fixed up. And so he calls these 4 dudes and they end up showing up. But they leave this movie by kind of going off into the bar of the New Republic. And so maybe there's more adventures for them in there later down the road. I don't know.
They knew when they left, they knew to go to Delphi base.
Yeah.
To warn Colonel Ward and everyone there hey.
So they're heroes.
They're heroes. Yeah. If it wasn't for them, the heroes wouldn't have been saved. But yeah, it's a nice callback because I believe these are the same Anzellans that fixed up IG-11. And which that whole scene where Mando has to like squinch down into their hut while they're working on IG-11, and he's like, "Hey, you got to fix this guy. He's my friend." He goes, "Oh, he's not your friend anymore." It was that whole scene was great. So I think those are the same Anzellans. Although back then, during that season of The Mandalorian, they didn't name them; they were just Anzellans, right?
Yeah.
But no, I would totally be down for the Anzellans, a Star Wars story. That I would be there.
Right.
I would be there first in line to watch that movie. I really dig these characters. Like I said, I think they're funny. I think they fit well into the Star Wars universe for what they do. And they've been a bright spot of every project they've been involved in. A little side story about Anzellans. In the Galactic Star Cruiser, they had a small door, I should say, that led to a small quarters, and supposedly in there was the Anzellan mechanic that kept the halcyon running.
Oh, nice.
And so they're like, and supposedly he was a grump, so they said, "Hey, don't knock on his door. He wants to be left alone." And of course, everyone went to knock on his door, and then we would hear like little rumblings and stuff of him,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't remember the name of the Anzellan, but yeah, that was part of the story of the Galactic Star Cruiser, was that on board there was an Anzellan mechanic that kept the ship running.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that. And this feels like they're low hanging fruit too. If they ever want to do like animation or do a kid show or a kid short, something on, I don't think they do Star Wars Kids anymore on YouTube. They used to have kind of like
Yeah,
that,
they used
that
to
off
have that.
channel,
Yeah.
but it feels like this is low hanging fruit. Like these are characters, especially after the Mandalorian Grogu movie. The kids were eating this stuff up whenever the Anzellans were talking, or Bad Baby, or no squeezy,
No squeezy.
whatever the different lines are. Those are all things that the kids would eat up, and so maybe there is an opportunity to bring them onto like an animated show, later down the road or something.
I will say, while I would welcome that absolutely, for me, the part of the Anzellans characters are the movements that they do with the puppets, like the real stiff movements that you see with the puppetry. I think that also makes the Anzellan character. So while I would totally welcome seeing Anzellans in animation, obviously we wouldn't have that because it'd be animated. But for me, so I would have to wait and see if I saw something like that, whether it would hit me as much as the live action Anzellans do. But yeah, for me, the way that they, the puppetry around the Anzellans makes the character as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, and it's the same with Grogu. When now seeing Grogu in this last movie where it was like 99% puppetry, if they go back to, say they do a fourth season of The Mandalorian and we have Grogu, and they go back to like, maybe, I think it was 60-40 puppet CGI, is watching the CG Grogu going to take away from the whole Grogu character? Because I thought the puppetry and how they moved Grogu and whatnot, same with the Anzellans, that made that character. So I guess we'll see. But yeah, kudos to everyone behind the Anzellans, all the puppetry team, Moaning Myrtle. They knocked it out of the park with that character, and now it's a Star Wars mainstay. They are a Star Wars mainstay.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Travis said, my mother, who knows nothing about Star Wars, decided to see the movie. So to her, for a random mechanic who speaks gibberish to suddenly show up and became main characters, that made it funnier for me. Yeah, they just kind of showed up as just that, simple mechanics, and got swept up into this, galaxy type adventure, which is very on brand for Star Wars. So it certainly tracks. All right, well, those are all the main characters. I think that's pretty much everybody. I don't know we left anybody out. We may have at this point, but I thought maybe we could let's get into. We've got 3 questions tonight to answer. We're going to give away one of the posters here based on the 3 questions. And so, why don't you kick us off with the first question there?
Okay, first question is from Julian from Instagram, and the question is: if we would have gotten Luke, Bo-Katan, or other Rebels characters and or Fett to cameo in the film, where would it have been most gratifying? So I'll go with Bo-Katan and Boba Fett, because honestly, I thought about it. Trust me, I have. I'm a Star Wars fan. I think about all these alternate ways a story could have been told.
Yep. Yeah.
I couldn't find, even in my own head canon, I couldn't find a place where Luke Skywalker would fit in. However, I do find a place where Bo-Katan and or Boba Fett would have fit in, and that is at the end. Maybe the Anzellans go to Mandalore and bring in the Mandalorian cavalry to save Mando and Grogu instead of a New Republic Blue Squadron out of a Delphi base. Or they know Boba Fett, and they go to Boba Fett, and Boba Fett comes out in Slave One, and comes to the rescue of the Mandalorian and Grogu and Rada.
Yeah.
And I lean toward more Boba Fett, because then my headcanon started shifting to, okay, Boba is now the daimyo of Tatooine, Mos Eisley, and
Espa.
here is the rightful heir
Yeah.
right in front of him. How does that play out? So I thought about that as well. So those are the cameos. Like if those cameos were in the movie again, Bo-Katan, Boba Fett, it would have been at that point where instead of having the New Republic fleet come, one of those two came to save Mando and Grogu.
Yeah,
and
I
Rhoda.
like that idea. Yeah, no, it's great. I like the thought there. The problem with somebody like Luke is, again, he just changes the dynamic of everything, right? He's going to win. He's going to save the day. He's a hero. He's a legend. He's all those things. And so bringing him in as a cameo really kind of can be disruptive. But, bringing other characters, like you said, like Bo-Katan or Boba Fett, those are probably more accessible and people that can go and come in and not really change anything. I mean, I like the idea of Bo-Katan coming in. We've got a question a little bit later that we'll probably answer off air about, just specifically about the lack of female presence in the movie. I was really hoping and thought we would get a Bo-Katan kind of same thing. Like, the Mandalorians come to help out Mando, who's helped them and done so many things for them, right? It felt like it was time to return the favor. The problem is that, that suddenly starts spinning into a different kind of story for them because they were really trying to make this something that was accessible, didn't have to have a lot of history, kind of a self-contained story in a lot of ways, even though it did kind of give us maybe one or two open threads there at the very end. Bringing them in would suddenly make it much more complex, would extend the story. You'd have to start thinking about, okay, where do they cut for some of that to happen? You're probably talking about an additional 10, 15 minutes of the movie time just for the exposition, the buildup, and then the payoff of them doing all that, right? So that really kind of starts be eaten into the budget. So, as much as I love the idea, I think based on the story that we were given, I can see why that didn't happen, and I think it makes sense. But thanks, Jillian, for that question. I forgot to put the question up here on the screen. Bro, what's wrong with me here tonight? That was Julian right there. The next one is from Sad Clown Sergio. This is from Instagram. It says, how do you feel about the criticisms that the Mandalorian Grogu movie felt like one long episode? I think they're valid. Like, I really do. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's, your perspective, is really what kind of formulates a lot of the opinion, whether you like it or hate it, quite honestly. I can see where this could have been a episode or two, or maybe three, or a series of episodes. I get it. I mean, honestly, we've taken episode 4, A New Hope, and we broke it up into television episodes, right? So for me, creatively, like, I can totally see where I could cut here, take this part here, move this over here, and really make it into a full fleshed out kind of series of episodes. I think if you do that, like, there aren't many, I'm being completely honest here, you could do that with a lot of other movies. Like, you can take almost all kinds of movies and say, oh, this just feels like an episode because you've got Act 1 right here, Act 2, and Act 3. Well, guess what? That's how movies happen. And that could easily be episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, right? That's just the way it works. So I don't hate I think when people are coming in saying that this was lazy or, not a great movie because it just was an episode of Star Wars, or it felt like a couple of episodes of Star Wars, The Mandalorian, season 4, or whatever. I don't think that's fair criticism. I don't have a problem with that, I guess, in short, but I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So here's the thing. Anything in entertainment can be adapted to anything on how that entertainment is delivered. Look, we have books that you can listen to now, and does that change the content of the story? No, it just changes how that content is delivered to you.
Right.
So it is an absolutely valid criticism. But like you said, Albert, almost any movie can be broken down into 3 or 4 episodes. I mean, and this is not the same thing, but I'm going to go back to my childhood. So, which I got to say, it's the 40th anniversary. I cannot believe it, of Transformers, the movie. Okay. I loved it.
Still hurting from that one, but yeah.
But I still love it. Yeah. I'm still trying to get over the death of Optimus Prime. Spoiler.
Right.
But when they debuted the next season of Transformers, the G1 Transformers, guess what the first 4 episodes were?
Yeah.
The movie broken down into 4 episodes. Same thing with G.I. Joe, the movie, which is okay, nowhere near as good as Transformers, the movie. But when the next season debuted, That's what they did too. They took that movie and broke it down into 4 episodes, and that's how they opened that new season. So that just, again, they're cartoons, they're not live action movies. But the point is, you could take any story and adapt it to the medium that you're using to deliver the story and the content. So and that's why that criticism is valid, because yes, it could have been just television episodes clumped together into a movie, but you could take any movie and expand it and get 3 or 4 episodes out of movie. So it's kind of like the best way I could say when I hear that criticism, again, it's very valid, is like, duh, yeah, you can do that, you know. So that's how I feel about when I hear that.
Yeah, I'd agree. Here's just one other quick thing. If you think about it, Star Wars came and was birthed from the old serials, TV episodes, Flash Gordon, inspiration, right? If you watch Star Wars Episode 4, Episode 5, all the George Lucas stuff, they can easily be broken down into episodes, because that's how his mind worked. That's how he was trying to put them together, you know, calling back to the old Flash Gordon serials that were out there. So yeah, it's not weird. It's actually part of the DNA. And I'm not trying to be an apologist or anything like that. It just simply is the truth. That's exactly how Star Wars was created. To see it on big screen maybe feels weird because you don't see the way those are broken up in all the other movies when they really are. I get that, right? But I didn't hate it, and I'll just leave it at that. So great question. I know it's something that's come up a lot, and I don't know that we've officially addressed it here on the show. Sergey, I know you had another question. I'm going to answer that. It's a little bit longer, so I'll answer that one offline on social media. So I'll reach out to you there. And then we got one more question left.
All right, this is from our Patreon member, Krista Martinelli. My 12-year-old Santino is interested in knowing what the ending means. He said the question, Mando asked Grogu, "Where do you want to go, kid?" could mean a lot of things, i.e., they're working for the New Republic, or are they doing bounty hunting? And then character development starts over, or do they take a break? See, that's the great thing about an ending like that, is that we don't know, so we're left to speculate ourselves. And I think that is part of the aura of a movie like that, is kind of like, you know, we can go all the way back to episode 4, A New Hope, and at the end everyone gets the medal, and you know the Death Star is destroyed, and at that time in 1977, that was it. You know, the Empire was done. The only Darth Vader was the one that did survive. But again, at that time in Star Wars history, you know, that was going to be it. But then what happens after that? You know, what happened? Does Luke become a Jedi?
Right.
Does Han go back to being a smuggler? You know, is Princess Leia now going to ascend to Queen? You know, what happens? And I think that's part of the aura and the mystery and the lore of movies like this, is that when you have those open-ended endings, it kind of allows your imagination to run wild. And I think that's part of the fun.
Yeah, I do too. So because it is a 12-year-old asking, I will give a definitive answer, because I know if my 12-year-old asked me, they would be like, so what do you think? Like, which one is it? They actually want an answer. So I would say the idea that they would be working for the New Republic, I don't think so. I think they're okay. I mean, I think they're working for the New Republic. I don't necessarily think that Mando and Grogu are ready to say they are part of the New Republic. I think for all intents and purposes, that's probably the case. But they're never going to fully outright admit it. Are they doing bounty hunting work again? I think so. Like, it feels like that's probably, you know, they're still taking jobs for different people. And he's very selective now about who he takes jobs for. He doesn't take them from crime lords. He's working for the good guys only at this point. I think that makes sense. Morally, you would want to do that, especially if you have a kid. You're not going to go do some shady business with anybody else. He's got a bone to pick with the Galactic Empire. Like, it almost felt like he was excited to go after all of these galactic remnants, these warlords, right? He gets off on that stuff. So I feel like that is something that he definitely enjoys doing. But I do think it is an opportunity to kind of rebrand the characters now that Grogu, I mean, if you think about what was the outcome of this movie, it's that you have now Grogu who, yes, he's still limited in terms of what he can say and maybe some of what he can do, but he definitely was able to kind of stand on his own, right? He had to learn to fend for himself. He had to learn how to take care of Mando. And you couple that with all the other stuff that he's been through the first 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, and he's a much more kind of, self-standing, viable character. And so that opens up a lot of opportunity for The Mandalorian now. In my head, where I would like to see him go is I want to see him return to Bo-Katan and figure out how best to kind of start pulling all the Mandalorians back together. There's a ton of rebuilding, both physically and connectedly, with the relationships that are going on there with all the different types of clans. It feels like there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. I don't think Bo-Katan's going to be able to do that on her own. She's going to need people that are like the Mandalorian and Grogu, who are this group of 2 or clan of 2, and they represent the old ways, and you've got the other groups that represent the new ways. There's got to be somebody that kind of brings and merges them together, right? That kind of acts as that liaison, if you will. And I think that's the role that I want to see the Mandalorian. And now, don't get me wrong, that sounds kind of boring, I guess, if you just hear it. But there are all kinds of stories and actions and stuff that can happen as a result of that. So that's where I want to see him go. I want to see him go back to Mandalore. I want to know what happens on Mandalore. I want to know what happened on Concordia. Where are all the clans? Are they going to come back? Are they going to align with Bo-Katan as the primary leader now? Which ones are not? How do the Armorer and some of the old group, how do they fit into that, right? There's just a lot of different conflicting dogmas that are going to start happening, and I feel like he is going to be that person to kind of bridge those two together. So that's where I hope I see him go. And again, plenty of action that still can happen, because it sounds like there's all kinds of horrible things there on Mandalore, and they're probably still dealing with the Imperial remnants as well out in that space. Right. I mean, they're scattered throughout the galaxy at this point, so it makes sense that there's some contention that could happen there as well.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, those are the 3 questions that we had. And so the winner tonight, we actually had 3 posters left. And I was telling Chris, like, hey, I don't want to hold on to these posters. So what we're going to do tonight is we're actually going to give everybody that submitted a question a poster. So the winners are all 3 of you guys. And then I was going to pull up the graphic, but I couldn't get to it fast enough here. There we go. Julian, Sergio, and Santino, congratulations. You guys have all won posters. I'll reach out to you guys, get your addresses, and I'll mail off the final 3 in the tubes probably next week because of the holidays coming up, but I will get those out. And Paisley, I've got yours as well, and I think I've got one more that's backed up. So I'm just waiting to go to the post office all at one time, but I will get all the posters out. So thank you, everyone who submitted questions throughout all of these episodes for us to answer. They've been a lot of fun. They've really challenged us. They've given us a lot to think about, things that we don't think about. And I think that's what really enriches the show, is the way you guys engage with us and bring in this type of questions and content to us. So thank you so much for all of that.
Yes, thanks everyone. It's been a blast reviewing this movie and breaking it down in these certain topics. And now we've come to the end. And I just want to reiterate something. I really did love this movie, regardless of the success, quote unquote success around financials and what other fans thought about it. But here's what I have to ask to everyone that's watching or listening now. We might have missed an opportunity to see this movie in the theater, even though I'm sure a lot of us has already seen it at least once. But eventually it's going to hit Disney Plus. When it hits Disney Plus, go in there and give it a spin. Go watch that movie again, enjoy it in the comfort of your own home. So that way we can let Lucasfilm and Disney know that, yes, financially it may not have made the most money, but we Star Wars fans love this movie. So that's going to be my parting statement as we wrap up our breakdown of The Mandalorian and Grogu, the first Star Wars movie we've gotten in the theaters in 7 years.
Yeah.
And we'll move on from here. And then we have 2 movies coming out next year. So be on the lookout for coverage of those in the coming months.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, before we get out of here, how about you got some shout outs for the people that joined us in the live stream tonight?
Yes. Thank you so much to the folks that joined us. We have Alex, Qui-Gon J 2944, One Up versus CPU 64, Travis Mitchell, Sergio Solis 94, Dale E. Skywalker, Strong Mustachio, aka my girl Vanessa, Paisley, Music Train 1, and Johnny Knoxville, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2014. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and chatting with us here on this episode of the Cantina Cast.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys jumping in, asking the questions, and all the feedback. There was some really good stuff in there. Shout out again to Travis Mitchell for the super chat. Appreciate you guys you doing that. It's something we don't advertise much, honestly, but if you are so inclined, you can do a super chat through YouTube. You should be able to do that. There's a button down there somewhere. So, but don't forget, we're going to take just not really a break, but we've got a couple of episodes still coming up. We've got the Legacy review. That's my spoiler-free review. That'll be happening on July 14th. We've got, after that, July 20th, we'll be doing Echoes of the Empire, issues 2 and 3. We've got some Patreon episodes in there as well. And then I'll come back on the 28th of July and deliver my full review of Legacy. That is the Madeline Rowe book following Rey and Leia heading to Tython to rebuild the saber that was destroyed at the end of The Last Jedi. That'll be the full review on the 28th, and hopefully we'll be able to get Madeline on here to do like a Q&A kind of session sometime about a month after that. And that'll give you everybody some time to read the book so you guys can come back and engage on that show as well. So that'll do it for us this week. So thank you guys so much for joining. On behalf of myself and Chris, thank you all, and we will see you guys here on the next episode.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.